Hello again and welcome to the program. I am Suren. Imagine what a difference a day makes. When you consider there is a huge difference between the current human beings all around the world and the animal kingdom, the plant, vegetation world, and the whole observable nature. Humans usually do not take much note of what they are surrounded with. A marvel, a magical world which does not care whether they are here or there, alive or non-existing. The whole human nature and other nature seems to care only for the light and the dark, and the daytime and the night, sunrise or sunset. In fact, the whole nature of all creatures, the ones that fly to the ones that crawl, ones that walk, the ones that float or swim, no matter what they may be, they all care only for their procreation, shelter, food, and sleep. Is there anything called thinking? And it is when considering thinking of the future and or the past. Although the memory exists all the time, and it has been experienced, yet the future often doesn't make any sense for them. What is the difference between an ant and a cow, a cat, and a dog, a dolphin, and a crocodile, an elephant, or a horse? There's not much of a difference when you think about it. They don't seem to worry about tomorrow. And that could be the reason why it is probably written as if a supposed Son of God said to his disciples, "Look at the creatures of the earth, and they don't worry about what they are going to eat or drink. Your heavenly Father gives them food every day. Do not worry about what you are going to eat and to drink, for your heavenly Father provides you with something to eat and provides you with all that you need." Of course, those words are not exactly interpreted as well as differently said than what I have indicated herein. When you consider the human traits of worrying about their past, concerned about their present times, and about their future, that is, if they have one. They seem to worry about everything, whereas animals do not. In fact, the whole nature does not care. But a human has been given something more important than the whole world of animals, and insects could realize, that is, if they could. That is called the imagination that leads humanity as it did in their past, and will do so in their future, to invent, to find ways to make their lives easier, happier, and hopefully healthier. That is the greatest difference between them and the animals. The human is spoken of as being made in the image of their Creator, but the whole nature is also said somewhat created by some intelligence in the universe, which is not what the humans would describe as their imaginations have led them as being a God whom they choose, or rather chose, to worship. Do animals worship a God Do animals also worry about not to offend their creator, although there may be some feeling in the animals as with the plant world, which we may have discovered through our imaginations and through the things we have invented throughout the centuries? Do animals and insects think? There certainly is a thing called instinct, moving by feeling. The ability to sense what may happen in the future terms, as far as they are concerned, but do they worry about it? And they are subjected to all kinds of circumstances. Think of the cattle in the field without shelter against the elements, the rain, and the heat. Not because they lack the infamous imagination the humans misuse. Why do I call it infamous, would you say? Because it has led humanity to the edge of disaster due to what they have been fed for centuries or inflicted with. Imagination without a reference point is impossible, you know. But imagination has been manipulated by the human teachers, gurus, preachers, and so-called scientists, which cannot be comparable with the scientists we came across in recent centuries, including today. Thankfully, they have led the way to inventions of many useful kinds to make life a lot easier for themselves. But at the same time, their imaginations have led humanity to the edge of disasters, as it was. Enmities, destruction of lives, imagination was not used creatively alone, but it was utilized to destroy, to annihilate one another, not lifting up their standards to create many more wonderful things, but for only devastating consequences with humanity. Their imaginations have led the way to creating worshipful acts and the need for a divinity for them to worship. And religion was born, that to lead them to more negative forms of imagination, thus leading them to invent weapons of destruction, bombs of such magnitude that can literally leave a whole world of humanity desolate and destroyed. Negative thought created by negative people of religious kind, creating more religious ideologies of fanaticism, more and more religious absurdities, more wars, and more everything else against each other. With the varying kinds, species of mammals, birds, and all other creatures, one can never discover any hatred or enmity among them, and there is no thought of war, but only protecting themselves against the bigger and more vicious animals. However, they have not been able to protect themselves against the most vicious animal there is. Guess what that animal is? Did we need to tell you more? Certainly you know it. Because humans have been given a task to look after that nature, the animal kingdom, the plant world, as well as creating what they are naturally gifted with, building shelters for themselves, and facilitate schooling for their own kind, to educate their great minds to invent and to create, including huge cities with all sorts of facilities, but then it would also give them the the facilities to protect themselves, and tending the world. But for now, as it seems to have developed into thinking only of their own selfish interests. Thankfully, the animals still live in their own natural ways, using their own natural instincts. Humanity has indeed created a monstrous existence, an existence that is not fit for a beautiful planet Earth, that was provided for them to live on and tend it, making it into a more advanced world that they can in unity live on it, advancing in technologies and in medicine and all other aspects of their lives. Humans have been given speech so they could communicate. They have been given intelligence to create means to communicate all around their world. What have they done? Probably using it all quite constructively in a very modernistic way, but also always aiming to provide information about their own findings, but to destroy one another. They killed and are still killing one another. Many innocents, their women, their children, their husbands, through their war efforts and what that war provide them with. And now you cannot even talk about how wrong that attitude has been, because they would look at you as if you are an alien or a person who never cares, and you might even be annihilated in the process. Why did humanity have to become worse than the animals? Why humanity needed to be destructive to their own religious and fanatical ways of being? If you dare any human being, why is there pain in the world? That is hatred with humans against each other, which is of course the total opposition to what they are meant to become. Are they learning a civilized way of thinking and being, different from the wild beasts that fight each other to protect their own circle of being? There is only one planet which they don't care with its nature, but its animal kingdom and vegetable kingdom. Only humans' own interests are considered, solely thinking of their own coffers to fill it up with riches, and hopefully stomachs with the best food without even considering where that food comes from. However, as we know, they consume large amounts of, you guessed it, junk food blended with their industrial waste products. Believe it or not. Just think about how many lives have been destroyed during their conflicts until now, and how many innocent lives have been extinguished, how many thinking minds have been silenced, many getting hurt due to human wars, conflicts, and fights. Do you travel much? There are many people around the world who love to travel as tourists to all sorts of places, mainly to very affluent touristic corners of rich countries. But there are also those places around the world where the real people live. They are the poorest of the poor, whom the rich may classify as being unworthy to consider. And if you would go into a third world country, you go to the big cities where you don't see anything other than beautiful landmarks, tall buildings, rich people dressed in fashionable and beautiful garments. But if you would go along with shanty townships, perhaps along railway lines, or under bridges, or roadsides, where the real people live, without any hope to improve their lives, because all those rights have been denied to them. Think about it. Not a very nice picture of humanity, is it? In fact, I have traveled to places, but wherever I have been to, I was told not to go into certain recesses within the large towns and big cities. I have been advised not to go there without protection, maybe even carrying a gun or a knife to protect myself, or go with somebody else who knows the art. Otherwise, I was told, if you stick your fingers outside the train, for example, you would never know who would cut your fingers off just to obtain your rings if you're wearing them, or wristwatch. You might even lose your hands. Just be careful. This is the state of humankind today. And so, what can we do? You can do one thing, we all can, and that is to educate the people. Sometimes it is necessary to force them to education, to learn the best ways to live and survive, giving them a chance to imagine and invent. You would be surprised how you would be wonderfully happy to see a happier world, and that world would become beyond what humanity fights on for their own riches today, for their own beings alone, for their own selves, and for their own interests only, leaving the others literally to rot in misery. Consider. That is the picture humanity has created all around this beautiful world. Who are more civilized, do you think? Humans or animals? Indeed, there is a way of dealing with this whole issue, instead of complaining how ugly the things are, and perhaps attempting to only ignore the poorest, perhaps even thinking that things will just disappear, and the poor will be no more. Just consider that you can do things, and you don't have to work hard to make others richer without a single work, without subjecting them to slavery. Consider now the most affluent countries around the world, such as Americas, Russia, Australia, European countries where everyone fights to survive, wherein some become richer and others becoming poorer and dying in poverty. And the population of a world grows into higher and bigger numbers. Population control can be a challenge, but education will help humanity. Before going to other planets, before destroying the other planets as well, humanity must take note of this. Try to clean your front yard and make your world a beautiful place first. Find ways of improving and create unity, not separations. Create love, not stupidity. Create understanding, not ignorance. Stop everything that creates separations, even if it be your religious ideals, and then you will see humanity becoming one and living in peace. Learn from the animals, if need be, Learn from your vegetable kingdom upon the planet. Learn because it is all there like an open book. All you have to do is now to read that book. Never fight one another, not even over your own ideologies. And never fight anything at all. Just live life as it should be lived. Don't force your kind into unacceptable behaviors. Don't force any slavery, bitterness, and hatred amongst yourselves. Take note that there is only one way to survive, and then you can start thinking and preparing yourselves to travel into anywhere within the universe. You will have opportunities and know how to do many more fantastic things all together in unity. But your main call right now is to learn to live in peace. According to the articles we discover in today's well-known literature, that the Homo sapiens evolved 300,000 years ago and dominated the earth. However, the question still remains: how long can humans last? What would probably be thought of that humans might go eventually extinct? Human species might last for another billion years, but the end will be with the expanding of the sun when it swells outward and heats the planet to a state when things could and would change. A billion years ago, life on Earth was only made up of microbes, and multicellular life did not make its appearance until about 600 million years ago. What would it look like in another billion years is anyone's guess. In time, perhaps, the Earth's atmosphere will not contain the oxygen we currently enjoy, and it can mean that there will be more anaerobic microbes, that humans on planet Earth will be lesser and non-existent. In the long term, that is when humanity would have gone. Understanding the whole story in a paleontologist's way, mammals usually persist for about 1 million years. But these rules may not apply to Homo sapiens, for they are rather exceptional, meaning that humans might last for millions of years further. Unless, of course, we have many opportunities for a doomsday for humanity to be wiped off with their nuclear war ambitions and the revenues caused by the climate emergency. There are also a danger from asteroids, which once killed the dinosaurs, as it happens once every 250 to 500 million years, according to some physicists. But humanity would have the ability to save itself from such gigantic asteroids if they had been given enough warning in advance. We are also told that the humans are very exceptional species and could last for millions of years. Doomsday is certainly around the corner, and humans could be wiped out by an asteroid strike or committing a thoughtless self-destruction worldwide by their nuclear arsenals. An all-out nuclear war could easily destroy the whole humanity. The older bombs striking Japanese cities in 1945 killed about 200,000 people, if you can recall. But a single modern-day nuclear weapon that is about 300 kilotons dropped upon a city would kill 1 million people in 24 hours. A small nuclear war, as for instance between India and Pakistan, could kill about 27 million people in a short term, while a full-scale nuclear war between, say, US and Russia could cause about 360 million direct hits. However, the actual threat to humanity's existence could come after the war. But the soot from massive fire ignited by the bombings would rapidly alter the climate and thus leading to a nuclear winter. Even a regional nuclear war would damage the ozone layer, blocking out the sunlight and reducing precipitation worldwide. And the result would be a global famine, which would kill more than 5 billion people in just about 2 weeks. The possibility of destroying humanity altogether is still a real concern. Humans are facing health stressors from chronic pollution that have been exacerbated by the additional heat brought on by the climate change. As it is discovered, and hot temperatures force people to breathe more rapidly to dispel the warmth, and in turn, they draw more pollution into their lungs. This also deepens the problems around food security, as persistent drought can devastate crops and infectious disease. Climate change and health inequities, and inequities in general, is what is impacting the global population today. Will these inequities eventually lead to a species downfall, would you say? It's not very easy to calculate such likelihood, but it is probably not realistic to consider the risks individually anyway, says Luke Kemp. He also says, if you are trying to rely on a single silver bullet to kill everyone in a single event, you better write a science fiction novel. You can now imagine a planet pushed to such an upheaval by sea level rises and disruption to agriculture from climate change. Imagine now that the humans of the climate-ravaged world would attempt a geoengineering solution that probably goes wrong, and the situation becomes worse. Resources become scarce, and a bunch of countries have nuclear weapons ready to use them. Mosquitoes that carry yellow fever range as far north as Canada in this scenario. And so, the human population could decline and disappear in the face of an arsenal of changes, according to scientists. In climate science, there was a model thought of, and the research into what the world might look like at 2 or 3 degrees Celsius warmer temperatures than the pre-industrial average. But looking at what an increase of 5 or 6 degrees Celsius might look like. Because scientists cannot really predict the effects of that warming, and partly because climate scientists feel pressurized from politicians not to appear alarmist. And Kemp says the general field of existential real risk is relatively new and just understudied. If you had questions as to how much humans should worry about something as a big picture as of extinction, think about it. Humans are heating the globe, overexploiting and destroying the nature while using land and water unsustainably, and creating chemicals which are harmful to all life. Today's reality is that some human beings are undermining and destroying living conditions of many other people, Cornell says. From a human perspective, this is an existential crisis already, not a risk somewhere up ahead. A question was put forward. What do you think are the chances that the humanity will survive long enough to colonize other planets? Do you think that humanity will live long enough to go to other planets or other solar systems? If so, how long do you think it will take humanity to get there? And what will be the state of the planet Earth by then? When one of the participants said, "I would say the chances are much higher than most people have stated." Climate change is real, though, but even the most passionate of scientists on the subject have never supported the climate change will cause human extinction. This is because of our ability to adapt, and global deaths by natural disasters have been decreasing because of better preparations in every city. We have a 25% surplus on food production, which is staggering, even if not spread everywhere. As long as we can start using thorium for nuclear power, then we can minimize deaths. And then move on to fusion, which is further than we have been led to believe. But human extinction does not seem to be in question. That does not negate the possibility of asteroids, nuclear wars, volcanic activity. But even those are incredibly unlikely and improbable to kill everyone, even in after effect. So I would say that humanity's chances are around 95% to become an interplanetary species. Even more if we send people to the moon and then to Mars in the upcoming decades. One other said, "I agree mostly with what you are saying, and I agree that human extinction is not really on the table anytime soon. If there is some sort of disaster, whether it be by climate change or asteroid, it will not be to kill literally everybody in order to fall. There will be a total social collapse. If an asteroid hits and wipes out 90% of the world's population, the remaining 10% will not focus on developing advanced technologies. They will be focusing on surviving in a world that most of humanity has not had to deal with in hundreds, even thousands of years." I think the answer really depends on what it means to colonize. Is a small research settlement of 50 people on Mars considered colonized? Or does it require there to be an actual self-sustaining city? This is all dependent on how humanity wants to think about the issue of extinction. But it is a total possibility with the mindset the human mind or brain thinks. One other said, "The next century or two will probably be rough, but we are the most adaptable species that has ever lived. there is probably nothing we could do to cause our actual extinction, aside from a systematic effort to nuke as much surface of the planet as possible, which is obviously not how nukes would be used. And even that probably could not quite do so. No extinction event has wiped out all life on Earth so far, and it is the adaptable species that survive, of which we are probably the best example for complex, larger organisms. I suppose humanity can only dream on and imagine, because that is part and parcel of the human mind. Another says, self-enforcing actions. Once we can grow food on Mars, Moon, or space, there is, by definition, no food shortage on Earth. Newsflash, there is no food shortage on Earth today, though massive overproduction. There is a distribution issue here to feed everyone, though. And once we are on Mars, we will learn so much so rapidly that Jupiter's moons, or even other solar systems, should not be as hard as we imagine today. In 1960, everyone was convinced we would have human colonies on Mars and the Moon right now. So, what do I know? If humanity would only eliminate every possibility of nuclear war, then we could confidently say, yes, humanity can survive. However, as we all can see, currently the human leaders cannot see or comprehend what is likely to happen, and they don't believe that nuclear weaponry can wipe off huge proportions of the human population, even their own. Will human species begin to think, or will they continue on dreaming? That is a question. With that, I would like to end this session and the episode. Those questions are there for you to ponder upon. Until we meet again, keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.